The first time I saw Ethan Caldwell smile, it was like the world tilted on its axis, and I was falling into a place I didn't understand. His laugh echoed across the crowded cafeteria, bright and unapologetic, pulling every eye in the room toward him like gravity. I was 16, invisible, and utterly unprepared for the way my heart would betray me. My name is Lucas Harper, a junior at Westview High in suburban Colorado, where the mountains loom like silent judges over our small lives. I was the kid who hid behind sketchbooks and oversized hoodies, content to blend into the background. But Ethan, he was the son, class president, soccer star, the guy who could charm teachers and students alike with a single grin. Everyone loved him, and I was no exception, though I'd never admit it out loud. Not when he was dating Ryan, his boyfriend of 2 years, the kind of guy who seemed perfect in every way I wasn't. It started in September, the air crisp with the promise of fall. I was sketching in the library, my pencil scratching out the lines of a mountainscape, when Ethan burst in, his campaign posters tucked under one arm. "Lucas, right," he said, his voice warm, like he'd known me forever. My heart stuttered. He knew my name. I nodded, too stunned to speak, as he dropped into the chair across from me. "You're always drawing. Mind if I see?" I slid my sketchbook toward him, my hands trembling. His fingers brushed mine as he took it, and I swear the room spun. He flipped through the pages, his eyes lighting up. "These are incredible," he said, and I believed him, because Ethan didn't lie. Not about art, not about people. But then Ryan appeared at the door, all easy confidence, and called Ethan away. As they left together, laughing, I felt the sharp sting of being a shadow in their light. That moment planted a seed, one that grew into something dangerous. I started noticing Ethan everywhere, leading assemblies, organizing fundraisers, stealing glances in the halls that I told myself meant something. I'd lie awake at night, imagining what it would be like to tell him how I felt, to step out of the shadows and into his orbit. But Ryan was always there, a reminder that Ethan's heart was already claimed. By October, I was drowning in my own secret. I joined the student council as a volunteer artist, designing posters for Ethan's initiatives, just to be near him. We'd stay late in the art room, laughing over paint splatters and bad campaign slogans. "You're quiet, but you've got a lot going on in there, don't you?" Ethan said once, tapping his temple with a teasing smile. I wanted to tell him everything, how his voice made my chest ache, how I'd memorized the way his hair fell over his eyes, but I just shrugged, my cowardice louder than my longing. One night, after a council meeting, Ethan asked me to walk with him to the soccer field. The stars were sharp against the Colorado sky, and the air smelled of pine and possibility. "You ever feel like you're hiding something from the world?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. My breath caught. Was he talking about me? About us? But before I could answer, he continued, "Ryan and we've been fighting lately. It's hard, you know, being who everyone expects you to be." I wanted to scream that I understood, that I was hiding too, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I mumbled something about pressure in school, and he nodded, like I'd said something profound. We sat on the bleachers, the silence between us heavy with unspoken truths. For a moment, I thought he might lean closer, might see me. But then his phone buzzed Ryan, asking where he was. Ethan stood, his smile fading, and I was alone again, a shadow under the stadium lights. The next week, rumors started swirling. Ethan and Ryan were on the rocks. People whispered in the halls. I hated myself for the spark of hope that ignited in my chest. What kind of person hopes for someone else's heartbreak? But I couldn't help it. I started imagining a world where Ethan was free, where I could be brave enough to tell him how I felt. I sketched him in secret, his face filling pages of my notebook. each line a confession I'd never voice. At the fall festival, everything changed. Ethan was running the dunk tank, his shirt soaked, his laughter infectious. I stood at the edge of the crowd, clutching a sketch I'd made for him, a portrait of him under the mountains, his eyes bright with dreams. I'd planned to give it to him, to say something, anything. But then Ryan appeared, wrapping an arm around Ethan's waist, and the crowd cheered for their golden couple. My courage crumbled. I tore the sketch in half and slipped away, the pieces falling like leaves behind me. As I walked home, the weight of my secret pressed harder. I wasn't just in love with Ethan, I was losing myself to it. How do you love someone who doesn't see you? How do you step into the light when you're afraid it'll burn? I didn't have answers, but I knew one thing. I couldn't keep being a shadow. Not forever. The weeks after the fall festival were a blur of avoidance. I stopped going to student council meetings, claiming I had too much homework. In truth, I couldn't face Ethan, not after seeing him and Ryan so effortlessly together. My sketchbook, once my refuge, became a mirror of my obsession, every page filled with his face, his smile, the curve of his jaw. I hated how much space he took up in my mind, but I didn't know how to stop. Westview High buzzed with the usual chaos of junior year midterms, pep rallies, the pressure to be someone. I drifted through it, my silence louder than ever. My best friend, Mia, noticed. "You okay, Lucas?" she asked one lunch period, her brow furrowed as she stole a fry from my tray. I shrugged, muttering something about stress, but her eyes lingered, like she could see the storm inside me. Mia was the only one who knew I was gay, the only one I trusted with that truth. But even she didn't know about Ethan. Some secrets are too heavy to share. One chilly November morning, Ethan cornered me in the art room. I was working on a mural for the winter formal, my hands smudged with charcoal, when he walked in, his campaign smile replaced by something raw. "You've been avoiding me," he said, leaning against the table. His voice wasn't accusing, just sad. My stomach twisted. Had he noticed me pulling away? Did it matter to him? "I've just been busy," I lied, focusing on the muralist swirl of snowflakes and starlight. He stepped closer, his sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. "Lucas, come on. You're one of the few people I can actually talk to." His words hit like a punch. He thought of me as someone real, not just a background figure. But what did that mean? Was I a friend, a confidant, or just a convenient listener? He sat on the table, his knees brushing mine, and started talking about Ryan. They'd had another fight, this one worse. "He thinks I'm too focused on school, on being perfect," Ethan said, air quoting the word. "But it's not about that. It's about, I don't know, being enough." His vulnerability cracked something in me. I wanted to tell him he was more than enough, that he was everything. Instead, I asked, "What do you want, Ethan?" He looked at me, his green eyes searching mine, and for a heartbeat, I thought he might say something that would change everything. But then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I just want to feel like I'm not letting everyone down." I nodded, my throat tight, and we worked on the mural in silence, the air thick with what we didn't say. That night, I couldn't sleep. Ethan's words replayed in my head, mixing with the image of him and Ryan at the festival. I started to wonder if I was misreading everything. Maybe Ethan's kindness wasn't special. Maybe I was just another person he charmed. But then I'd remember the way his eyes softened when he looked at me, the way he lingered after meetings, and hope would flare again, reckless and painful. By December, the rumors about Ethan and Ryan grew louder. They'd stopped holding hands in the halls, and Ryan was spending more time with the lacrosse team than with Ethan. At a council meeting I couldn't avoid, Ethan seemed distracted, his usual energy dimmed. Afterward, He asked me to help him carry decorations to the gym. We walked through the empty school, our footsteps echoing, and he said, "You're different, Lucas. You don't expect anything from me." I froze, my heart pounding. Was he saying he saw me? Really saw me? I wanted to ask, to confess, but fear clamped my mouth shut. Instead, I mumbled, "I'm just me." And he smiled, like that was enough. We set up the decorations in silence, fairy lights casting a soft glow over the gym. When he left, his shoulder brushed mine, and I held on to that touch like it was a lifeline. The winter formal was a week away, and I decided to go, despite myself. Mia dragged me shopping for a suit, teasing me about my mystery crush. I didn't tell her it was Ethan, but her knowing looks made me wonder if she'd guessed. The night of the dance, I stood in the gym, surrounded by glittering lights and pulsing music, feeling like an imposter. Ethan was there, alone, his tie loose and his eyes distant. Ryan was nowhere in sight. I watched him from across the room, my heart a war zone of hope and fear. When he caught my eye and started walking toward me, I thought I might collapse. "Dance with me?" he asked, his voice low, almost shy. I nodded, unable to speak, and we moved to the edge of the dance floor, swaying awkwardly to a slow song. His hand was warm on my shoulder, and I wondered if he could feel my pulse racing. For those 3 minutes, the world was just us. No Ryan, no expectations, no shadows. But when the song ended, he stepped back, his smile tinged with something I couldn't read. "Thanks, Lucas," he said, and then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd. I stood there, my heart a tangled mess, wondering if I'd ever be more than a moment to him. The dance left me reeling, Ethan's touch lingering like a bruise I didn't want to heal. I spent the next week dissecting every second of that moment, his hand on my shoulder, the way his eyes held mine, the hesitation in his smile. Was it real? Or was I building castles out of air? The uncertainty was torture, but it was also addictive, fueling my daydreams and my dread. School resumed after the winter break, the Colorado air sharp with January frost. Ethan was back to his usual self, rallying the student council for a spring charity drive. But there was a new edge to him, a restlessness I hadn't seen before. Ryan was still absent from his side, and the whispers grew they'd broken up, or they hadn't, or they were taking a break. I didn't know what to believe, but every rumor fed the reckless hope I couldn't shake. Mia cornered me one afternoon in the cafeteria. Her eyes narrowed. "Spill it, Lucas. Who's got you so messed up?" I tried to deflect, but she was relentless, poking at my silence until I snapped. "It's no one. Okay." Her face softened, and she squeezed my hand. "Whoever it is, they're lucky to have you crushing on them." I wanted to laugh, to cry, to tell her it was Ethan, but I just nodded, the weight of my secret heavier than ever. One snowy afternoon, Ethan found me in the library, my sketchbook open to a half-finished drawing of him. I slammed it shut, my face burning, but he just grinned. "Hiding something?" he teased, and I mumbled something incoherent. He sat down, closer than necessary, and started talking about the charity drive. "I want you to design the posters," he said. "Your art, it makes people feel something." His words were a spark, igniting a dangerous courage. "What do you feel when you see it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me, his expression unreadable, and for a moment, I thought he might say something real. But then he laughed, light and deflecting. "I feel like you're going to make us a lot of money," he said, and the moment was gone. We worked together on the posters, our conversations slipping into something deeper. He told me about his dad, a stern lawyer who expected perfection, and his mom, who'd left when he was 10. I shared pieces of myself, my fear of never being enough, my dreams of art school in New York. Each word felt like a step closer to him, but also a reminder of the line I couldn't cross. He was still Ethan Caldwell, class president, and I was still Lucas Harper, the shadow. One evening, as we finished a poster, Ethan's phone lit up with a text from Ryan. His face tightened, and he shoved the phone in his pocket. "You okay?" I asked, my heart pounding. He sighed, leaning back against the wall. "Ryan wants to talk. Says he misses me." My stomach dropped. "What do you want?" I asked, echoing my question from months ago. He looked at me, his eyes raw with something I couldn't name. "I don't know, Lucas." I thought I did, but now, he trailed off, and the silence was deafening. I wanted to reach for him, to tell him I was here, that I saw him, but fear kept me frozen. He left soon after, and I sat there, staring at the post-era vibrant design of hands reaching out, a symbol of hope I didn't feel. The charity drive was a success, the gym filled with students and donations. Ethan was in his element, charming the crowd, but I caught him glancing at me, his smile faltering. After, we stayed to clean up, the gym quiet except for the hum of the heaters. "You did good," he said, tossing me a water bottle. I caught it, my fingers brushing his, and the air crackled with something unspoken. "Ethan," I started, my voice shaking. "There's something I need to," but before I could finish, Ryan walked in, his expression stormy. "We need to talk," he said to Ethan, ignoring me completely. Ethan hesitated, his eyes flicking to mine, then followed Ryan out. I stood there, the words I'd almost said burning in my throat, wondering if I'd ever get the chance again. That night, I sketched furiously, pouring my frustration into lines and shadows. The page became a storm of emotions: Ethan's face, Ryan's glare, my own trembling hands. I realized I wasn't just in love with Ethan. I was fighting for a version of myself I didn't know how to be. Brave, honest, seen. But how do you become that person when the one you love might never love you back? The confrontation in the gym haunted me. Ethan and Ryan's tense exchange replayed in my mind, their voices muffled but sharp, like a storm I couldn't escape. I didn't know what they'd said, but Ethan's absence from school the next day felt like an answer. I wandered the halls, my sketchbook a dead weight in my bag, wondering if I'd pushed him away by almost confessing. When Ethan returned, he was quieter, his usual spark dimmed. I watched him from afar, too scared to approach. Mia noticed. "Of course. You look like someone ran over your dog," she said, dragging me to the art room during lunch. "Talk to me, Lucas." I wanted to, but the words felt like glass in my throat. Instead, I showed her a sketch not of Ethan, but of me, standing in a shadowed doorway, light just out of reach. She studied it, then hugged me. "You're enough. You know that, right?" she said. I didn't believe her, but I nodded anyway. By February, the school was buzzing with Valentine's Day plans, a cruel reminder of my solitude. Ethan was back to leading council meetings, but his smiles were forced, and Ryan was still a ghost in his orbit. I volunteered for another project, designing banners for the spring talent show, hoping to bridge the gap between us. Ethan thanked me, his voice warm but distant, and I wondered if he was pulling away too. One afternoon, we were alone in the art room, cutting out paper hearts for the banners. The silence was heavy, broken only by the snip of scissors. Finally, I couldn't take it. "Are you okay, Ethan?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He paused, a red heart in his hand, and looked at me. "Not really," he admitted. "Ryan and I were done. For good this time." My heart lurched, hope and guilt colliding. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. He shrugged, his eyes distant. It's not your fault. It's just hard to know who I am without him. His words echoed my own fears. And for the first time, I felt like we were on the same page, both searching for something real. We worked late, the school empty except for us. As we packed up, Ethan touched my arm, his fingers lingering. You're always there, Lucas, he said, his voice soft. I don't say it enough, but it means something. My breath hitched. Was this it? The moment I'd been waiting for. But before I could speak, he pulled away, grabbing his bag. See you tomorrow, he said, and he was gone, leaving me with a heart full of questions. The talent show brought new chaos. Ethan was emceeing, his charisma lighting up the auditorium, but I saw the strain in his eyes. I was backstage, adjusting props, when he found me. Nervous? I asked, trying to keep things light. He laughed, but it was hollow. Always, he said. You ever feel like you're performing for everyone but yourself? His question hit too close. Yeah, I said, my voice raw. Like you're hiding who you really are. He looked at me, something flickering in his gaze, and I thought he might say more. But then the stage manager called him, and he was gone, leaving me in the dark with my pounding heart. After the show, Ethan was surrounded by admirers, but he broke away to find me. Walk with me, he asked, and we ended up on the school's rooftop, a secret spot kids used to sneak away. The night was clear, the stars a blanket above us. I'm tired of pretending, he said, his voice breaking. I don't know who I'm supposed to be anymore. I took a breath, the words I'd held back for months clawing their way out. You don't have to pretend with me, I said. I see you, Ethan. All of you. He turned to me, his eyes wide, and for a moment, I thought he might lean in, might close the distance. But then he stepped back, his expression conflicted. I need time, Lucas, he said, and my heart sank. But I nodded. I'd wait. I'd always wait. As I walked home, the cold biting my skin, I realized something. Loving Ethan wasn't just about him, it was about me. About finding the courage to be seen, even if it hurt. But could I keep loving someone who might never love me back? And if I did, what would it cost me? Spring arrived in Colorado, the mountains blooming with new life. But I felt stuck, caught in the limbo of Ethan's words. I need time, he'd said, and I clung to those 3 words like a lifeline, even as they tore me apart. Every glance, every conversation, was a tightrope walk between hope and heartbreak. School was a whirlwind of prom planning and college applications, but my world narrowed to Ethan. He was everywhere, leading meetings, laughing in the halls, his presence a constant ache. Without Ryan, he seemed lighter, but also lost, like a star untethered from its orbit. I wanted to be his anchor, but I was still too scared to step fully into the light. Mia was relentless, sensing my turmoil. You're killing yourself over this guy, she said one day, cornering me in the art room. Just tell him, Lucas. What's the worst that could happen? I laughed, bitter. He could say no. Or worse, he could pity me. She rolled her eyes. Or he could say yes. You won't know until you try. Her words lingered, a challenge I wasn't sure I could meet. One rainy afternoon, Ethan and I were stuck in the library, working on a history project. The rain pattered against the windows, cocooning us in a world of our own. He was quieter than usual, his pen tapping restlessly. You ever think about running away? He asked suddenly. Just leaving all this behind. I looked at him, surprised. Sometimes, I admitted. But I'd miss the mountains. And some people. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, the air was electric. Yeah, he said softly. Some people are worth staying for. My heart raced. But before I could respond, the bell rang, shattering the moment. Prom was the breaking point. Ethan was on the planning committee, and I volunteered to paint the backdrop a starry night sky, mirroring the one we'd shared on the rooftop. We worked late, just the two of us, the gym filled with the scent of paint and possibility. You're good at this, he said, watching me blend blues and purples. Not just art. Making things feel real. His words were a spark, and I couldn't hold back anymore. Ethan, I said, my voice trembling, I need to tell you something. He turned, his expression open but guarded. I took a breath, the world narrowing to this moment. I like you. More than I should. I've liked you for a long time. The silence was deafening. His eyes widened, and for a heartbeat, I thought he might smile, might say he felt the same. But then his face softened into something worse pity. Lucas, he said, his voice gentle. I'm flattered. Really. But I'm not. I don't think I'm ready for that. Not with anyone. My heart shattered, but I nodded, forcing a smile. It's okay. I lied. I just needed you to know. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away, grabbing my bag. I should go, I said, and I was out the door before he could stop me, the rain soaking me as I ran home, tears mixing with the downpour. The next week was torture. Ethan tried to talk to me, but I avoided him, my shame a living thing. Mia was there, picking up the pieces. You were brave, she said, hugging me. That's more than most people can say. But bravery felt like failure when it left me so empty. At prom, I almost didn't go, but Mia dragged me, insisting I deserved to shine. I stood at the edge of the dance floor, watching Ethan laugh with friends, his tie askew. He looked happy, but when our eyes met, there was something else regret. Maybe, or something I couldn't name. He walked over, his steps hesitant. Can we talk? He asked. We stepped outside, the night air cool against my skin. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm figuring myself out too. His honesty disarmed me, and I realized he was as lost as I was. It's okay, I said, meaning it this time. I just want you to be happy. He smiled, sad and real. You too, Lucas. You deserve that. We stood there, the stars above us, and I felt a shift. Not closure, not yet, but a step toward something new. Could I let go of Ethan and still hold on to myself? That was the question I carried as I walked back into the dance, ready to try. After prom, I thought I'd hit rock bottom, but life has a way of surprising you. Ethan's rejection stung, but it also cracked something open inside me, a desire to be more than a shadow, to live for myself, not just for him. I started sketching again, not his face, but my own portraits of a Lucas who was brave, who wasn't afraid to be seen. School felt different now. The hallways were still loud, the mountains still looming, but I carried a quiet strength. Mia noticed, grinning as we worked on a new mural for the art club. You're glowing, she said, smudging paint on my cheek. I laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in months. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was finding my way. Ethan and I settled into a fragile friendship. He'd smile at me in council meetings, his eyes careful but kind. I still loved him, probably always would, but I was learning to let that love exist without consuming me. We worked together on the senior class gift, a mosaic for the courtyard, and our conversations were easy, if cautious. You're different, he said one day, his voice curious. Stronger, maybe. I shrugged, but inside, I was beaming. Just figuring things out, I said, echoing his words from the rooftop. He nodded, and for the first time, I felt like we were equals, not a star and a shadow. But the past wasn't done with us. Ryan reappeared, transferring back to Westview after a brief stint at another school. His presence was a shock, stirring up old rumors and new tensions. I saw them together one afternoon, talking by the soccer field. Ethan's shoulders were tense, Ryan's gestures sharp. I turned away, my heart twisting, but I didn't let it pull me under. I had my own life to live: art club, college applications, dreams of New York. Still, I couldn't help wondering, was Ethan slipping back into his old orbit? One evening, Ethan showed up at my house, his face pale. "Can we talk?" he asked, and I let him in, my heart pounding. We sat in my room, my sketches scattered across the desk. "Ryan wants to get back together," he said, his voice flat. "He says he's changed, but I don't know if I believe him." I swallowed the urge to tell him to run, to choose himself. Instead, I asked, "What do you want, Ethan?" It was the question I'd asked before, but this time, it felt different, less about me, more about him. He looked at me, his eyes searching. "I want to be honest," he said. "With myself. With you." My breath caught. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He hesitated, then said, "I care about you, Lucas. More than I realized. But I'm scared. I don't know if I'm ready to be that person." His words were a lifeline and a knife. He cared about me, but not enough, not yet. I nodded, my throat tight. "Take your time," I said, meaning it. "But don't hide from yourself, Ethan. You're worth more than that." He smiled, a real smile, and for the first time, I felt like I'd given him something, not just taken. The rest of spring was a balancing act. Ethan and Ryan didn't get back together, but their history hung over us, a shadow I couldn't ignore. I focused on my art, submitting a portfolio for a scholarship to an art school in New York. When I got the acceptance letter, I cried, not just for the opportunity, but for the version of myself who'd fought to get there. At the senior class picnic, Ethan found me by the lake, the mountains reflecting on the water. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice warm. "New York's lucky to have you." I smiled, my heart full but steady. "Thanks," I said, "but I'm not going anywhere yet." We sat together, the silence comfortable, and I realized something. I didn't need Ethan to love me to love myself. But could I hold on to that truth when the world kept pulling us apart? Graduation loomed, a finish line and a starting gun all at once. I was ready to leave Westview, but the thought of leaving Ethan behind, our fragile connection, our unspoken truths, felt like abandoning a piece of myself. I'd grown, but love, I learned, doesn't vanish just because you will it to. The senior class was in chaos, planning pranks and parties, but I found peace in the art room, finishing the courtyard mosaic. Ethan joined me often, his presence a quiet comfort. We talked about everything: college, fears, the future, but never about us. The weight of his confession, that he cared about me, hung between us, a question neither of us dared to answer. One afternoon, Mia dragged me to a senior bonfire, the flames casting shadows on the mountains. Ethan was there, laughing with friends, but his eyes kept finding mine. When he joined me by the fire, the air felt charged, like a storm about to break. "You're leaving soon," he said, his voice low. "I'm gonna miss you." My heart ached, but I smiled. "You'll be fine," I said. "You're Ethan Caldwell." He laughed, but it was sad. "I'm not as great as you think," he said. "I've been scared, to be honest. About a lot of things." I wanted to ask what he meant, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I said, "You don't have to be perfect, Ethan. Just be you." He looked at me, his eyes bright with firelight, and for a moment, I thought he might kiss me. But then someone called his name, and the moment was gone. I watched him walk away, my heart a tangle of hope and resignation. Could I leave without knowing what we could have been? The night before graduation, Ethan texted me, "Meet me at the rooftop." I went, my heart pounding, the stars above us as bright as they'd been months ago. He was waiting, his hands shoved in his pockets. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice unsteady. "About you. About me. About what I want." I held my breath, afraid to hope. "And?" I asked. He stepped closer, his eyes locked on mine. "I like you, Lucas," he said. "I think I've liked you for a while." But I was too scared to admit it, even to myself. My world tilted, his words a spark in the dark. "Why now?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Because you're leaving," he said. "And I can't let you go without telling you the truth." He reached for my hand, and this time, I didn't pull away. We stood there, the night wrapping around us, and I felt seen, truly seen, for the first time. But reality crept in. I was leaving for New York, and Ethan was staying in Colorado. Could we build something on a confession made in the 11th hour? I didn't know, but I wanted to try. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He smiled, nervous but real. "We figure it out," he said. Together. We sat on the rooftop, our hands entwined, talking until dawn. It wasn't a promise. Not yet. But it was a beginning. And for the first time, I felt like I wasn't a shadow, not to him, not to myself. Graduation day was a blur of caps and gowns, the Colorado sun warm on my face. I stood with my classmates, my heart full of Ethan's confession, but also heavy with the unknown. New York was waiting, a dream I'd fought for, but leaving meant risking what we'd just found. As I walked across the stage, my diploma in hand, I saw Ethan in the crowd, his smile brighter than the sun. After the ceremony, we found each other in the chaos. "Congratulations," he said, pulling me into a hug. His arms were warm, solid, and for a moment, I believed we could conquer anything. But the question lingered, could love survive distance, doubt, and the weight of our fears? Summer stretched before us, a fleeting gift. We spent it together, stealing moments in the mountains, sketching by the lake, talking about everything and nothing. Ethan was different now, freer, like he'd shed a skin he'd outgrown. He told me about his plans to study political science, to make a difference, and I shared my dreams of art galleries and city lights. We were building something, fragile but real. One evening, under a sky streaked with pink and gold, we sat on a blanket by the lake, our shoulders touching. "I'm scared," he admitted, his voice soft. "What if we mess this up?" I took his hand, my heart steady. "We might," I said, "but we'll figure it out. We're worth it." He kissed me then, slow and certain, and it was everything I'd imagined: fire and warmth and home. The world didn't end. The mountains didn't crumble, but something in me settled, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. I wasn't a shadow anymore. I was Lucas, and I was enough. When I left for New York, Ethan drove me to the airport. We stood outside the terminal, the August heat heavy around us. "This isn't goodbye," he said, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "It's just, see you later." I nodded, my throat tight, and kissed him one last time. As I walked away, my heart ached, but it also soared. I was stepping into my future, not as a shadow, but as myself. In New York, I found my place: art school, new friends, a city that buzzed with possibility. Ethan and I talked every day, our connection growing despite the miles. We visited each other, stealing weekends in Colorado or New York, building a love that was messy but ours. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. Looking back, I realized the journey wasn't just about loving Ethan. It was about loving myself, about finding the courage to step out of the shadows and into the light. Ethan was my spark, but I was my own fire. And as I stood in a gallery, my art on the walls, I knew I'd found something even more precious than love, the strength to be me.